All right, and there we go. So not gonna do
There we go.
the opening music today because I didn't pull it up, and why bother? But good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening if you're listening aus Deutschland. Welcome back to Festina Lente, hosted by Callipolis Radio. I am here today with Pete from iReadBooks. You may have heard him on his channel or on this one. He did voice the King of Bohemia in our Sherlock Holmes story that we did, and did an excellent job. But Pete, I don't know if you wanted to introduce yourself in any other way. Regardless, you should go check out his channel. He's an excellent narrator. He's done some similar stories. We cross over a little bit for Lovecraft and Nicholas Leonard, but I think that's usually about the only ones we have in common. Other than that, we're typically sort of our own spheres. But Pete, if you wanted to introduce your channel, please go ahead.
Hello. Hey, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm very, very flattered to be on here with you, Rylan. Yeah, I don't know what to tell about me other than what you already said, right? So yeah, Lovecraft is something where our channels cross a bit of well, Sherlock Holmes. I think I did one narration of one Sherlock Holmes story so far on my channel. But I did some Conan Doyle poetry readings. So
Oh, you did? Okay.
there's that. Yeah.
Because I mean,
Because he had some
oh, sorry. I was just going to say,
he
would
had
you
some
say your main focus is
no,
poetry on your channel?
not really.
No?
Actually, the poetry came like, well, the whole thing started was never meant to be a project or anything. It was just
Oh.
kind of to force myself into reading more.
Oh, okay.
And so I thought, because I have the very bad habit of starting books or even just starting stories, right? And then never finishing them. And so I thought I have to kind of kick myself in the behind. And so I thought, well, if the whole channel started as a chapter by chapter reading of novels.
Okay. What did you start with?
I started with The Wizard of Oz
Oh,
because
interesting.
I thought, well, it's a children's book. I can read that, even as a non-native. And then hubris got the best of me, and I read Moby Dick,
Oh, okay.
which was my Moby Dick, basically.
Yeah.
But I finished it, so there's that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then somehow I started to do short story narrations as well, and this is the main focus currently. So I try to put up one short story narration per week and one poetry reading on Sundays, which was that was actually quite funny because I think was it already in The Wizard of Oz, or was it in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland? Because there are a couple of, I think it was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. There are a couple of poems in there, of course, and some of my subscribers said that maybe it would be a good idea to read poetry here and there. And so I started to do that Sunday poem thing, where I read poems across the field, right? No,
Yeah.
there's no real theme or anything behind that. It's just
Okay.
whatever crosses my mind and whatever I feel like doing that day, because that's the thing about the Sunday poem. The Sunday poems, I usually really find them and record them on that Sunday, which might change in the future because I'm very often not at home on Sundays.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
haven't been at home.
I recorded
So
a
there's that.
couple little short. I did the few readings of poems, but they were just my favorite ones, and I did them as shorts. I didn't do them as full videos just because they were quite short poems. But
Yeah.
I haven't done one of those in quite a while.
That's the thing, right? When I thought about doing them as shorts, but most of them are just slightly above though, or longer than the 1 minute
Yeah.
limitation that YouTube had. And so I have like, I don't know, 3 or 4 shorts on my channel. But now with the 3 minutes, I think it's 3 minutes now. I'm thinking about doing shorts here and there again.
Well, the other thing too is I think you have much slower pacing when you read than I do. I'm guilty of reading very quickly, and
I'm
especially when I
very
narrate.
slow. I would say that I'm guilty of reading very slowly. And this is whenever I did a short story narration, after I did it, because tried to avoid listening to other narrators
Mhm.
narrating the same short story, because I don't want to be kind of influenced
Oh yeah,
by
yeah.
their. And so I always realize that I'm like probably 1/3 slower. So
Mm.
my narrations are usually like 1/3 longer than most other people's narrations. So there's that,
Yeah, I find
which is funny because
oh no, sorry, go ahead.
no worries. It's funny because that's when I had been doing more theater than I do now. It was always like that. My directors always said, "Well, speed up. Slow down. Sorry, slow down. You're way too fast." And so it's probably because of that and combined that I'm not a native. So
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. I didn't even think of that. Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it would. Your first language not being English probably does slow you down a bit.
yeah, I think so too. Yeah. But I think I'm a bit faster now that we're talking than
Hmm.
when I'm reading.
Oh
When
yeah,
I'm reading, I'm
definitely.
very slow.
Do you know what your like narrating pace is? Because I went out of my way to find out what it was. And so
I have no
now I
idea.
can just look at the word count for a story, and I pretty much know how long the video is going to end up being. So I found that was very helpful for me.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah,
I should
because
do that.
I can narrate at about 8,000 words per hour. So
Okay.
yeah, so a half-hour story I know is 4,000 words, and 1 hour is 8,000. So it's approximately there, but I know that's like my standard narrating pace for pretty much anything.
I should do that. Because since you said like 8,000 words, that's what I'm currently looking for are stories around 7,000 word dish, so that I'll be just below the 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So that kind of fits. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, because the other thing I found too is I mean, you may have run into this. I have a bit of a problem keeping like consistent, consistent voice through the whole thing, and I feel like I can reliably narrate about 30 minutes to 40 minutes before I have to take a break and then come back.
Mm.
And I find then if I come back, I might sound like I'm in a slightly different tone. So like when I have to do anything longer, I feel like I can hear the tone shifts every like 30 to 40 minutes when I listen back to it. I don't think anyone else can pick up on it. It's just that I spend so much time listening to my own voice. I think I can
Yeah.
pick up on all these tiny differences. So I'm probably just crazy, but
No, I think we as in who record the stuff and sit there editing, I think we can actually notice the differences, but I also don't think that anyone else can.
yeah.
And that's exactly the reason why I try to avoid recording things in chunks.
Mm,
So I try
yeah.
to do it in one sitting. Sometimes, yeah, I have to do like have a little break of
Yeah.
5 minutes or 10 minutes. So because today I recorded Saturday's short story narration, and I had to make a little break because I got so hungry that my stomach grumbled so loud that it was actually on the sound.
Yeah.
So I had to do
I mean,
had
I
to
I
had to have
I don't like to take breaks if I don't have to, but then I mean, I have some like
no
five
same.
hour I have some like 5 hour Lovecraft stories, so it's like, yeah, I'm not doing all
Oh
of that
God.
in one sitting.
Yeah, that's the thing because I think I'm now at like 5 months or something that because I'm currently recording a novel again, or novel narration,
Hmm.
and I do it in sort of in the same fashion that I did when I started the channel that I record one chapter per day. Well, not every day, but it's always like one chapter. And it's what you said, right? When I listened to the previous recordings, I realized in parts a drastic shift in tone and also a shift in pacing and getting back to the characters, remembering the voices of the characters. That's not too easy.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but it's fun.
Especially with novels, I can get like, granted, I do read a lot of philosophy stuff on this channel. That one is pretty straightforward because you're just talking, basically. But especially with like the Lovecraft stories or some of the Somerset Maugham ones that are long, it's like you sort of build a little voice for that character, and then if you take a break and then come back, you're probably going to lose that voice and have to find it again. So it's like I better do this all in one sitting, or it's just going to be worse than it would be otherwise.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the thing, right? When I started the whole thing, I tried to come up with certain kind of I don't want to that sounds bigger than it is when I say with certain techniques to easily get back or to switch between different characters, specifically since I made the horrible mistake to do the whole thing on camera, so not quote unquote just audio.
That sounds like a nightmare with editing yourself together.
It is an absolute nightmare. If I were to start a channel like that again, I'd definitely do it without camera. But that was also like a kicking myself in the behind type of thing, because I knew back then that if I do audio only, then I'd be sitting there editing and editing and editing and redoing stuff and redoing stuff and redoing stuff, and then I'd never finish even just one single story. And so that was kind of the idea behind that as well, to say, okay, if I set up a camera, and in the beginning I didn't even do any kind of editing. I didn't even edit out slips of tongue or anything.
I
didn't do any audio editing.
Yeah.
Posted straight up. Took the memory card out of the camera and posted it
right to the thing,
to YouTube. And then when I realized, okay, this has become sort of a project and has become sort of a thing that I want to do and want to continue, then I started to learn a bit about audio and learn a bit about how to put things together and all that jazz. And I'm slowly getting there.
Well, I did the exact same thing. Because I mean, the reason I started mine was I was writing short stories of my own and just posting them online, much like, speaking of which, much like Nicholas Leonard does. I see you in the comments there. Hello, Nicholas. And I was just posting them, and then there were some YouTube narrators like picked up some of the stories. They were all like poorly written horror stories, but some narrators picked them up, and I was like, oh, that's very cool. And then I dropped writing for a little bit, and I got back into it, and I wanted to get them up on YouTube again. And so I was like, why don't I just record them as opposed to, sending them out to narrators to get them to record. So I just recorded some of my own stories, and then I was like, oh, you know what? The recording thing is actually really fun. And so I was like, I don't have any more stories of my own, but I want to record stuff. So I had a book of George Orwell's essays, and I had been reading it at the time. I was like, screw it, I'll record some of these and just post them. And so I recorded them, but I'm like, you can hear me drinking coffee through the whole thing. I don't edit any of my slip-ups out. And I posted them, and then people just started watching them. But it's like, I was not editing audio. My mic was bad, but they still got more popular than some of the stuff I post now with my like mic and sound dampening and everything. So you never know what people are going to like.
You never know, right? It's always like a surprise which stories or which poetry readings or whatever kind of gain momentum, so to speak, right? And sometimes it's the old stuff. Like I had this I'm since I have my tablet here in front of me and I'm on the chat right now, I can check. But there's this one short story that nobody cared for when I posted it, and it's now one of the most watched videos on my channel, which is quite crazy.
Yeah. Do you ever, I mean, I don't know, do you have the problem too where you check like YouTube analytics like 3 times a day?
I did in the beginning when I had like four viewers per month or something.
And you're like,
I checked it like every day.
Yeah, you're like, oh, am I famous yet?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
No, I have a weird thing where there's basically two videos or I guess three videos on my channel that account for basically I'd say half of all views that I consistently. It's just videos that are just being consistently watched every single day, and there's like three different
Yeah.
It's three different essays by Schopenhauer, and it's just people are constantly watching them, and that's probably half of all traffic that shows up on this channel. Um, and then everything else just gets like little views here and there. But I'm always curious when like one random video nobody's looked at in months gets a sudden spike of like 20 people showing up. I'm always like, I wonder how all of you found
Yeah.
this just all of a sudden.
Right. Right. And so, weirdly enough, since I posted novels chapter by chapter, some chapters of some novels
Do
get
better than
like
others. Yeah.
thousands of views,
Yeah.
like literally thousands of views, and other chapters of the same book like five.
Yeah. And
And
you'd
there
think it
was
would be
one,
chapter one that would get the highest, but it's not. It's like
right,
some random chapter in the middle.
right. With Moby Dick, it's I'm some random, as you said, some random chapter, and never could figure out
Yeah.
why. There was one fascinating thing about because I
I have
posted
a theory.
Dracula narration of. Sorry,
I have a
please go
theory
ahead.
why. I have a feeling that your video was probably found by students who had to write like a book
Yeah,
report on one specific chapter of a book and not the whole thing.
that that sounds about right. And if you look at the
Yeah.
analytics or something, you see that where sometimes you see where the viewers come from, and
Yeah.
some indeed come from some educational websites
Oh yeah.
that
Yep.
probably even listed the videos.
I had that
But
for one of my
what was
essays.
yeah, what was kind of funny because I have a full narration of Bram Stoker's Dracula
Mm.
on the channel, and like a year or so after I finished the book, suddenly one chapter blew off,
Mm.
right? It really took off, right? And I was like, where does it come from? And it was the chapter where in which Dracula sailed on the Demeter, the boat.
Oh, I mean that's a good chapter. I actually read Dracula like
Yeah,
a month ago.
it's an amazing book.
Hmm.
Probably one of my favorite books ever.
Hmm.
And that was just about the time when the movie The Voyage of the Demeter launched
Oh,
in
okay.
cinemas. So
Hmm.
that's where they came from. And that was basically the first boost my channel got. So
Hmm.
oopsie, hit my microphone. Thank you to those people who made the movie. Haven't watched it yet. Shame
Yeah.
on me, but I will.
It's interesting. It's interesting seeing those little like spikes and random things because you kind of start to build a story around it. Because I remember during the summer there was, and actually this is the reason that I wonder if he's still there. But this is the reason that Nicholas Leonard found me. Is because I was posting Somerset Mom short stories during the summer, and it was very funny because all of a sudden, so my typical audience is like young to middle-aged men. Like that's almost, I think that's like 97% of viewers are like American men who are between 20 and 35, I think is my, and it's because it's mostly philosophy stuff that I read here. So it's like, that's just who
Uh,
my audience is going to be. But during the summer, it was like August and September, my my audience switched to, it was like 80+% women over 55. Like all of a sudden for 1 or 2 months, that's what my audience became because a bunch of those Somerset Mom videos like just took off and tons of people were looking at them. And then I saw it like on a bunch of the videos, you could see how they were shared or how people found them. And I found that a lot of them were like direct links through email, or like they found them through Gmail or
mm,
Yahoo or Hotmail or something like that. And I was like, okay, so something happened where I think people like women in a retirement home found this and they've been emailing it to their friends. Is at least my story for how that happened. But I like to build those little stories of, okay, how are people finding this? And then you can kind of sort of put together a little story from the analytics.
that's funny, yeah.
Mm.
Because I realized similar things, but with me it kind of changes on almost on a weekly basis.
Oh.
So sometimes it's like really 14 to 25, or what the age, how do you say, the scale is.
Oh,
And
like,
then it's like
yeah,
60 years or old or young
yeah,
people. 60 years is not old. I have to be cautious because I'm rapidly rapidly approaching this age. And then it's like women around 35. So it's probably because of the diversity of different stuff that I have on my channel with the poetry, because
yeah,
it's not just poetry in one direction or from one different niche. It's just like all over the place. So, and sometimes certain, which is funny. One of the most watched videos on my channel is a children's poem,
oh,
which is kind of weird because this is nothing I do. It's I was browsing through the web and I stumbled over this thing. Never heard of the author, just thought it's funny,
hmm,
posted it. Nobody cared for it, and then suddenly it kind of blew up, and it's frequently in my most watched videos list. Um, and this is it's interesting, and probably I probably kind of confuse the YouTube algorithm
yeah,
with all the different stuff a lot. So
yeah,
it goes up in spikes and then goes down and then it goes up again. So yeah, but it's fun. It's probably kind of very similar to how my mind works, because now
yeah.
I have to my okay, no. I was afraid my computer switched off, but it was just the
Nope,
screen.
we still got you.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I haven't been posting a lot recently. I'm looking forward to doing more. I have a problem with sort of following where the views are, so I just kept doing Schopenhauer forever. But I think I'm going to go back to actually doing some stories now. Because the Somerset Moms, people really like them. It's just not a ton of people watch them, but it's like, I think I'm going to go back to that. So, and I mean, I also did a Nicholas Leonard story recently. Those always confuse my demographics a bit because one, I think Nicholas Leonard watches every single narration of his stories about 50 times himself, and then he always
I hope
shares,
so.
and then he shares around with his fans, and then they all show up, and they're a very varied group of people. So
I hope so. And since I can't really type on my tablet because I have
mhm.
thick fingers, and so on the chat, brittle silhouette of a star wrote, I think also often these types of videos are picked up from people that use them as background noise rather than listening chronologically.
That's true.
I'm
Yeah.
guilty of this with books, I know. Yeah, that's what I get from comments as well. One I had this brilliant comment. I really loved it about, and I think it was a Lovecraft story that I posted,
Mm.
and someone posted something to the effect or of I think even the exact words were, "Just read the damn story," because which was funny, and we had a back and forth in the comments, and it turned out to become or to be a really pleasant and really yeah, funny and very interesting also conversation we had in the comments.
Mhm.
And it's like that person, I assume it was a he, doesn't matter, also wrote like, yeah, I'm listening to that stuff to fall asleep. And with your, how did he describe it? Something to the effect, with your weird cadence, I cannot fall asleep.
Well, go listen to something else then.
And yeah, right. No, it was an absolutely nice person, right? And
Oh,
I don't mind at
interesting.
all with stuff like that. And we had, yeah, as I mentioned, we had some back and forth, and it was quite pleasant. And that's what he also, sorry, that's what he also wrote, right?
Hmm. Oh,
But it's interesting to me because I sit there, right? Probably you do it similarly. Like you read the way you, number one, we read the way we can read stuff, number
hmm,
one. And then we read the stuff in the way that we would like to listen, or what we would like to listen to.
hmm,
And since my attention span is really short, I need people to be very concise and be really tell the story also with their way of cadence and articulation and do weird accent and do weird voice. I don't think I go too overboard with my voices that I do, so I try to keep it. But that's one of the reasons. Well, number one is fun for me. I like doing voices. I'm not really good at doing different voices, but it's huge fun for me.
I know what you
And
mean.
specifically, since Nick mentioned my accents, he wrote in the chat, "Does some of the best accents." I don't do accents. I have an accent, and I just come up with stuff, and I try to avoid really mimicking accents because I don't know how these accents sound. I could do probably a couple of German accents because I'm originally German. I was born and raised in Germany, and so I can do some of them. Which brings me back to Dracula because Van Helsing is a Dutch person, right? And I think I could do a Dutch accent in German, but I certainly can't do a Dutch accent in English. At least not if I had not to think about it all of the time. So I came up with a fake accent for Van Helsing, which doesn't sound like anything, at least not that I've heard. And it was so much fun that I kept doing it. I practiced actually.
Okay.
Practiced like 3 days to do a Dutch accent, and I listened to Dutch people talk English, and then I listened to Dutch people talk Dutch, and I practiced, but I couldn't make it work in English, so I just came up with something.
That's a lot more. It's a lot more investment than I usually put because I can't really do voices or accents. I just usually change the intonation or just like the inflection character to character. Because like for the one we did with Sherlock Holmes, in my mind I was like, you know what, Sherlock Holmes sounds like he talks fast, so I just sped up when I was doing Sherlock Holmes. I was like,
that's the thing. I also think that he talks much faster and he's very straightforward.
Yeah.
So I can't remember how the one Sherlock Holmes story that I narrated so far. I can't really remember what went through my mind, but the thing is, what I try to do, and I fail miserably, I know, but it's still fun, is that I try to at least have the characters sound a tad British or sound a tad American if it fits. So it's the R's, but I try to avoid really doing existing accents because that's just I hate it when people try to do the accent that I grew up with, which is one of the 5 Bavarian accents that exist, and if they're fake, then it's like
you can tell it's fake. It's like that's every time I see someone do like a Canadian accent on TV. I'm like, I've never heard a person that sounds like that ever.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Also, I mean, it's like,
and it's even
Canada's almost as big as Russia. Like, there's a lot of different groups.
Probably. And I want to say hi to Gia, who's on the chat. My good friend Gia Ravenheart on the chat. Hello, I'm so glad that you could make it because we messaged yesterday.
Oh yes, hello all. Apologies, I haven't really been reading the comments out loud, but if you guys have a big point or a big question, feel free to ask it. I will see those.
Yeah, I have my tablet here as well, as I mentioned, so I see the chat, but I'm very slow typing with 2 fingers on the tablet. I should have brought my phone. It's easier to type on the phone with the thumbs, which is weird because they're bigger than my point.
Yeah, instead of
my other
chicken pecking on a tablet or something. Oh yeah, so okay.
Exactly,
so,
yeah.
You did mention earlier, or before we were even live, sort of something about your setup. How much does your setup for recording, does it take up an entire room, or do you have just like one little wall in a room, or how do you have your setup?
Yeah. No, it's basically just a wall, and I'm sitting on that very couch that I usually sit on when I do my recordings, and it's like, yeah, what is it, like what is feet, meters? You're Canadian. I can use the metric system.
Yeah, go
right?
ahead.
So
I know the imperial better, but I know both.
it's about 1.5 meters of a black backdrop, and it's the couch, which is also like 1.5 meters. So which is like
That's about 5 feet for anyone.
5 feet.
About that, yeah.
Yeah. 5 feet wide and 5 feet high, something like that. Which is, I made a wooden frame and I just stapled a black cloth on it. And I have on the other side of the room, there's also like of that size, but we use that. Oh, that's the idea. At least as soon as we're done with that room, we want to use it for photography, because my wife and
nice.
I are both very much into photography, and so
that's very cool.
she's a much better photographer than I am, but and also the better video gamer. So I guess she's playing Xbox right now. It doesn't listen.
Well,
It doesn't listen.
You're speaking a different language.
Yeah, but she understands at least.
Ja,
jetzt
wir können
maybe
Deutsch
she doesn't.
sprechen.
Wir können gerne Deutsch sprechen, aber ich glaube, das wird niemand im Chat verstehen.
Ja.
Nobody will understand it.
Ich verstehe nur ein bisschen.
But you speak very well.
Danke schön. Yeah.
You speak better German than I speak English. That's for sure.
Me and my, because my good friend of mine slash housemate was in German immersion for like 6 years in school, and I took German for about 3 years in high school, and then we didn't really touch it since, but then just kind of started doing German again, like doing lessons on Duolingo, and just kind of speaking it in the house, and it's like, oh wow, I remember a lot more than I thought I did.
It's a tough language. I mean, I was born here, I was raised here, right? And I even studied German literature in university, and I have no idea how German works. It doesn't make any sense.
I also hello to the Vicomte de Valmont, currently just joined the chat. Hello.
Hello.
I would say I find it's like, this is what I've run into anyway. German is much easier, I think, if you know English already, because I would say German is much easier to learn than French, which is ironic because I see French every single day. But I'd say German is much easier. Like the grammar structure is just, it's very English, and it's very fluid in the same way.
Okay, yeah.
And a lot of the words are very similar. Like a lot of the small words are similar, whereas like a lot of the large words are similar for English and French, but a lot of the small words are similar for English and German. So I find it very easy to like, the grammar was very easy to understand, whereas it's Canada, everyone has to learn French for 6 years, and I know zero French. I can probably say, I could say hello, which is ironic because literally every product and everything is labeled in French and every sign is in French, and so, but I still don't really know any of it.
Yeah, I had 7 years of French in school, but I also cannot speak. I can speak one sentence in French, and it's not the one that you probably think it is, because everyone says, "Oh, I know the one with coucher." No, it's not the one with coucher. I can't do that. I just know that one sentence, and I know it from the one time. No, I was twice in France. Now that I say it, I was once in Paris and I was once in Strasbourg.
Oh.
So the one sentence that I used frequently was "Je ne parle pas français."
Yeah, it's pretty much the only one.
That helped me a lot.
Pretty much the only one I got too. But like I found, I mean, granted, I think you hit a bit of a, like as with any language, I think you hit a bit of a wall at some point, and it just depends how fast you hit it. Whereas with German, I found it took a while. It took a while to hit it because it was like, oh, this is easy. This is so like English. Whereas with French and Spanish, it's like you just hit that thing immediately, and you're like, okay, this is tough. Because I took Japanese as well for 2 years, and then I tried learning Russian for a little bit, and those all of those were like, this is so different. This is tough. Whereas German, I was like, wow, okay, I got this one. This one's easy. But that's just my random sampling of a bunch of different languages. I've always
Yeah,
been
yeah. Well, French, I can definitely confirm that French is probably a lot harder
mm.
than German.
Well, because you still
And German is
you
tough.
you live in Germany currently, right?
Currently, I'm in Germany.
Oh,
Yeah.
you are, okay. Like, what's of like daily languages you hear? It's probably what, German and English are like the two big ones.
German mostly. English,
German mostly, okay.
German. Well, it depends a lot.
Because
Like
I
when
know like
you're
the I know
on
the
German.
rate of English speaking in Europe is very high. So
Yeah, almost everyone at least understands English at a basic level.
mm,
A lot of people struggle with speaking. So I work for a comparatively big company. We have currently about 130 employees
mm,
on site. And so because we very often hire temporary workers, and not all of them speak German.
mm,
And so we have to kind of train them somehow.
mm.
And since they come from all over the world, it's usually in English.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm like, of all the 130 people we have on site, I'm like the only one who says, okay, I'll do that. I'll explain everything to them in English. So, um, which works.
hmm
I mean, I don't think that my English is too bad,
Oh no,
but
I wouldn't say it's bad at all.
thank you. And so it's usually the problem that their English is worse than mine. And so I understand them, but they don't understand me.
Oh
But not
yeah.
because my English is so bad, but because, and so I have to, yeah, I have to kind of, which helps, of course, because you have to come up with new ways to explain stuff. And so in the beginning, I was like 50% of the time on my dictionary app on my phone
hmm
to find words, and so that helps a lot.
Yeah, I
And
mean
of
it's
course, I mean, like it's a it's a it's a vocabulary thing in many instances,
oh,
because
absolutely.
that's very
Well,
specific vocabulary that you don't use in in everyday
everyday
English.
life,
Like,
yeah. Well, I mean English is one of the biggest vocabularies I think in the entire world, but I think I mean, especially a story like that, it's rare that I remember it, but it's something I do think of every once in a while. It's like how lucky it is to be born speaking English as a first language, which is basically the world's language, kind of at this point.
mm,
Because it's like, hearing the stories of like other countries where, maybe everyone speaks a little English, but they mostly speak two different languages. It's like, oh yeah, translation would be really hard. Where it's like you're just growing up, in English Canada or probably America or Britain, anywhere. It's like, oh, I speak English, which is the language everyone in the world speaks. This is perfect.
this is pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
But it has become so much easier. I mean, like, because I'm almost 50.
Mm,
So when I was in my teenage years, when I was in school, um, it wasn't so easy to really get access to English other than books.
mm,
And
yeah.
now it's like you turn on Netflix or you just YouTube, right? And you have English all over
Yep.
the place.
And you can put subtitles in
And
anything. You got Duolingo on your phone. You
right,
got all the
right.
different apps on your phone. Yeah.
It was like when I think of school, we had this English teacher who had this. I mean, I have a very apparent accent, but hers was like the stereotypical German accent.
Mm.
And
Oh.
and she actually explained that to us, and it made a lot of sense because she was, of course, she was born like in somewhere, it must have been in the 1930s or something.
Yeah.
She was already quite old back then, and she said we never had access to English, to spoken English.
Yeah.
We learned English from books,
Mm.
and so we never heard it. And so at a certain age, you will not be able, or at least not be able without a lot of work, to get at least rid of your accent to a certain degree. Think of Schwarzenegger. But I
Yeah.
think with him, it's kind of,
It's
I'm
part of
not so sure
it's
whether
part of his
this is,
character.
I also think so. I think
Yeah.
he could if he wanted to, but why would he?
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
that's very, no, it's very interesting because I know definitely when I was learning German, I would look up videos of people speaking it. And it's the problem too is I think they make instructional videos where people talk in a way that no one actually talks. You know what I mean?
yeah,
When it's like a how to pronounce video and they say words very deliberately and they talk kind of like this, which is not the way that
mm,
any person speaks. And so then if you can watch a video of just someone naturally speaking the language, you're like, okay, I'm going to try and imitate them when I say these things, not the
yeah.
person who's telling me how it's pronounced, perfectly grammatically perfect. Because I know my parents had an interesting story when they went to, or no, this wasn't my parents. This was a friend of mine. He went and stayed in some hostel in, I think it was Thailand or Southeast Asia somewhere. And it was just a hostel of like international, visitors, travelers, whatever. And there were a few Australians that had already been staying there before him. And they, a lot of the people who stayed there were practicing their English with the Australians so that they could improve it.
Not a good idea
Yeah. As soon as
if you want to speak proper English.
exactly, as soon as he showed up, they all stopped practicing their English with the Australians and started practicing it with him because they all knew that they wanted Canadian or American sounding accents and they did not want Australian accents. And so it was like they immediately stopped listening to those guys and just came over and started talking to him.
Which reminds me of a story when I was it's been a couple of years ago. I went to Oktoberfest in Munich, which is like that big beer festival.
Oh, they do Oktoberfest here. I know.
Okay, yeah. And so there was this really, 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 really drunk Australian guy. And if it's true what they say about Australians, then they are quite tolerant to alcohol. So he must have
Oh, yeah.
had like, I don't know, 50 gallons of beer or something. And so we had that chat, which was quite funny. And then he asked me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm actually from Munich." And he said, "No." I said, "Yes, I am." "No, you're not." I said, "Yes, I am. I'm from Munich. I was born here." "No, you're not." I said, how can I convince you, right? I said, "No, you're not. You're Australian." I said, "No, I'm actually German." "Now you're Australian." And like after about a quarter an hour or something, he said, "Okay, you're right. You're right. I'm Australian." And then he said, "I knew it." And then he went away, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, that
So
is good. I mean, I've got an uncle who's, I guess, kind of Australian. He wasn't born there. He was born in England, but he's, for all intents and purposes, he's Australian. And I know he comes to visit every once in a while. Although the language thing, actually, it's my aunt, or not aunt, I don't know what she would be, great aunt or something. Anyway, she was born in England and she lived through the Blitz. She lived in a small village kind of on like the southern coasts of England. And I know like her town never got bombed or anything. I think the neighboring town got hit by one of the V-2 rockets or something. But she said her and her brother used to go hang out on the like fences by the highway and the farm roads because the German POWs, like the prisoners, they would come and they would force them to do road work. And none of them could speak English, but they would sit and they would just like joke around with the prisoners and just sit on the fence and watch them work. And one of the prisoners was like a carpenter and he would carve little wooden toys out of sticks that they would bring him and he would just give them to them. And they could never, like none of them ever spoke to each other, but they would just like laugh and make jokes. And I was like, oh, that's a cute story.
that's a cute story, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's really a cute story. Reminds me a bit of my dad's stories because he was born shortly before the end of World War II, and so
Okay.
he when the Americans came to Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a kid, and he always told me about the Americans,
Mm.
and he was so fond of the Americans, and he was like, yeah, oh, I was their mascot. I was allowed to ride on them on their tanks, and they brought us chewing gum and chocolate, and so
Wow.
that. And he was super, super fond of
Huh.
the Americans.
Mm.
always. I'm not so sure if he would be that
Nowadays.
fond of the Americans nowadays, but
Yeah, that's
that's a
fair.
different story.
Yeah. No, it's always interesting hearing those war stories because I have again, he was like a great uncle or great something. It was very funny. He was trained for the First World War, so okay, he must have been a great great uncle or great great grandfather. But he was conscripted into the Canadian cavalry, like the horse guys, for the First World War. And he went over to England and he trained for about 6 months, and then the war ended and they never deployed him. And apparently he would never eat beans and sausage again for the rest of his life because that's all they would feed him. But
Yeah,
yeah, he was almost there. And then I have my great grandfather fought in the First World War he fought for I think like 4 different armies because he was Polish and he was from the kommt aus Österreich, but he was conscripted into the Austrian army, and then I think he deserted to the Russian army because he could speak 7 languages. So he would just, every time the one side would run out of food or money, he would just change sides.
good idea.
So he switched to the Russians. He fought for the Russians until he deserted to fight for I think like the Bulgarians or something, and then I think he fought for the Turks and he fought for the Germans. Like he fought for like 5 or 6 different sides, and then as soon as the war was over, he said, "Europe sucks. I'm going to Canada," and he left. So
There's this weird story. I never found out whether it's true or not. That my grandfather, my mom's dad, who was I have to check the computer, which is just out of reach, and I'm a bit scared that it will shut off if I don't move the mouse after a while. So he was to join World War II. And there's this legend in our family, and as I mentioned, I never found out what is really true because he was a barber. And so he didn't want to go to war. And he had suddenly, when they wanted to how do you say, draft him? Is that the correct word?
Draft, conscript, I think, either or.
Yeah. And then he had this accident. And it was just that by pure accident, he lost 2 fingers.
Oh.
And
so they said you don't need to serve.
Right. And so he didn't have to go to war. And some members of my family claim that he actually sawed off his own fingers with a saw. Others say no, it was really an accident. And I never found out.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised because like I've heard a lot of stories about, people, there's some Americans, but the ones who were like drafted for Vietnam, just like shooting themselves in the foot, and then that was how they got out of it.
I wouldn't be surprised either, and it makes sense to me as well. I mean, who wants to go to war?
Yeah, nobody.
There's some people will, but
unless you're crazy,
want to, but I'm not so sure if that are the most reasonable people. It's my grandfather my dad's father was actually on a minesweeper. That's the word, I think. And he was a machinist and a minesweeper. He never talked about the war. Never ever.
Yeah.
Never mentioned it. So don't mention the war. Like in that no, it wasn't Monty Python. It was Fawlty Towers.
Oh yeah.
So don't mention. But he was obsessed with military.
Oh,
and so he had this really strangely obsessed, and specifically with the Marine Corps, where he was, right? And he had this in their house. He had this little. It was a bar in the basement, like really like one of those bars and at a harbor.
Oh yeah.
With fishing nets on the ceiling and so model ships, and Everything looked, and was even called Shark's Bar. And he had this little side room in which he he molded medals from like that you get for being a war hero and stuff.
Interesting.
And after he passed, and we had to clean out. Well, my grandmother lived a couple of years longer, but when she passed as well, so we had to clear the house, and we didn't know what to do with that stuff. Nobody wanted it, right? We wanted to give it to museums. And what do we want with self-made medals from World War II and uniforms and stuff? So that was. But I was like a teenager or something, and of course I asked him about the time. And my grandmother knew nothing about the war at all. I was lucky or fortunate to having met my grandmother, who was born in 1900 actually, so she lived through 2 world wars. But she also never mentioned it. She said, no, I don't know anything.
That's
so like
bizarre.
the Germans don't
talk about the
don't
war
know
much.
anything about the war, which is so don't mention the war. It's based on true events actually. But I have one of my grandfather's model ships, the first one he built. I have that, which is cool, and I have his old radio.
Oh, nice.
It's also very, very cool.
There was
doesn't work anymore, of course.
Yeah, but it's cool to have. I mean, it probably doesn't sound very good even if it did work. But
probably not.
There was something I wanted to ask you about because we're closing in on the last 10 minutes here. But I know you've mentioned kind of in passing a few times like your theater work. I'm just curious to hear like how you got into theater, what you do. Like, are you a stage actor currently, or you were formerly, or?
No, I don't have any kind of formal acting training, as in I never went to acting school or something, but I started like probably most people in school, like in my late teenage years, just joined theater club in school. And then after I graduated and my year of civil service, and I studied dramatics in university, and dramatics, literature, and social psychology. Which I never went to, so I just and so dramatics as a major subject, and literature and social psychology as minor subjects. And well, when you do theater and you study theater, you get to know people who know people who know people. And so it kind of I played in about I don't know how many different groups, and I co-founded 2 or 3 groups, and so I was even part of the ensemble, as we thespians say, of the oldest kind of it was a folk theater basically of my hometown, which was like I don't know 60, 70 years old, still existing. And we did really like that Lederhosen comedy stuff. Oh yeah, I did that for 10 years, and then I did that till my late 30s. So about 20 years, having been involved in 2 or 3 productions per year.
Wow.
And then since the theater, the one group that I was part of, and back then it was just in quotes one group. Usually I was part of 2 or 3 groups, and that group split up, and back then there was a lot of stuff to do, and I said, well, now currently I don't have the mindset for joining or finding a new group, and so I went on a hiatus, and that hiatus lasted about 10 years. And 2 years ago, my wife gifted me workshop attendance for improv theater. So I got kind of hooked on, and now have been taking about, I don't know, taking part in 12 or 13 improv workshops. We already played 2 shows. So that's what I'm currently doing, but it's more like attending workshops
Yeah.
rather than being actually on stage. Because even though I've been quite into it for
Mhm.
now 2 years, improv is a very different beast than
Oh yeah, I'm
than
sure.
yeah. So at least one of my trainers accepted me for her advanced improv workshop, which
Mhm.
is kind of already sort of a bit of a knighthood. And so there's that, and that's what I did the week before last week. I was a whole week was a improv training and street theater training, which
Mm.
is kind of funny because it's very physical, and I never
Mm.
saw myself as a very physical person, and that's what I learned from improv, because all
Mhm.
my trainers said, "Well, that's what you're really good at,
Mm.
right? You're don't try to be funny. Stop it.
Yeah.
Don't try to, because you're naturally funny," which I also never thought
Mm.
that anyone would ever say about me, that I'm naturally funny.
Yeah.
Because but that's the thing, right? I
Takes an outside
apparently in the
opinion.
years before, yeah, no, apparently in the years before I tried so hard, and I
Mhm.
tried too hard. I did stand up for about 6 or 8 years, and
Oh.
it kind of worked, and it was a lot of fun for me, and in some cases also for the audience.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes it was just like crickets in the
Oh
audience.
yeah.
One time I got kind of clapped off the stage. People just started clapping and didn't stop until I left the stage. But like that was one time.
Yeah.
Usually it worked
Oh
pretty
yeah, of
well.
course. All right.
And
Well,
that's when you're in an ensemble, right? And you bounce off ideas off each other, and people tell you what works and what doesn't, and then you change if you do the same thing, if you don't do the same material on like for a couple of weeks, then you realize what works and what doesn't, and
yeah.
if a joke works, you'll keep it, and if one doesn't work, you'll just drop it.
Well, I
So
mean,
there's
like,
that.
yeah, much like a YouTube narration channel, you have to switch up what you're doing to see what people like.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Yeah.
speaking of which, did you want to tell the folks listening what your upcoming plans are for what you'll be narrating on your channel, what you do, where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on at iReadBooks in one word. Today I recorded M.R. James's short story Rats, which is a
Mm.
really, really creepy one, and I enjoyed it very much. And I don't know, because depending on the weather, I will be home on Sunday or I won't. If I'm home, I will post a Sunday poem. I have an idea already, but it will take a bit. That one that I have in mind, I want to do something special. I don't know if I have the time to record it, but it will be one of the next ones. I won't tell which one. So yeah, so what I will do in the future, what the plans are to number one, to keep on going with the short stories. I started this year with a weird fiction special. So I posted most of the stories or narrations that I posted were weird fiction stories, Lovecraft, M.R. James, Arthur Machen, Robert E. Howard, which was kind of surprised me. I stumbled over Robert E. Howard via my friend Christoph of Miniature Mythos, by the way, who does lots of Conan narrations.
Oh.
So Robert E. Howard's Conan. Strange stuff in the best possible meaning.
Yeah.
I never read Robert E. Howard before. That stuff is very special, and he's pretty amazing at that.
Oh, okay. I'll
And
have to look
so
into
I
that.
will. Robert E. Howard is something that will be more frequent on the channel. More Lovecraft to come. There's
Nice.
this one Lovecraft story that I thought I have on the channel, but I realized I don't, which really surprised me, which was the very first Lovecraft story that I read, Dagon.
Oh yeah.
So
Yep.
that
That's a good
will
one.
be one of the next ones. But there will be more. And well, Nick, there will be a Nick Leonard special
Oh, very
soon.
nice. He's been making a lot of
Nick,
stuff recently. I mean, and he actually
yeah,
hasn't
Nick,
he hasn't been writing just about monkeys. So there is some stuff
yeah,
out there
no.
for you
But
to
I
read.
love that story. And that would have been one of the
Yeah.
next ones, but he posted today someone, and which I don't mind. So
Yeah.
because you started in the beginning, that some we of course there are crossovers, and of course, and that is good that there are crossovers, and I don't, because some people ask me, because I'm in contact with a couple of narrators on YouTube, of course, and some people ask me, "Well, do you mind that?" No, of course I don't,
Mm, okay.
and that's the great thing about YouTube.
Hmm.
Some people can connect with my way of doing things. Others can connect with other people's ways, or more connect more. So this is the amazing thing, and I love listening to stuff that I narrated
Hmm.
after I narrated it,
Yeah.
because I don't want to really be influenced, and then seeing and realizing very different aspects of the same story, and that just kind of quote unquote proves my hypotheses that the story is not on the page but in the people's minds. And if different people read the same story or narrate the same story, then it will be a different story, and
Yeah.
that's amazing.
It just adds to it.
So what I try to do is, if there are, so the channels in my vicinity that I follow on YouTube, or that I'm even in contact with, I try to not post the same stuff like
Mm.
within the next couple of weeks. But yeah, Nick sent a couple of amazing stories, and there are some that there will be definitely a 2 or 3 Nick Leonard stories special in the very
Perfect. I'm a
future.
I'm a big fan of his story Antigua, which I just read recently. So
Oh,
it's my
okay, then
probably my favorite Nicholas Leonard story so far, aside from the Looking for the Moon one. So probably it's in the top 3 of my
oh yeah,
Nicholas Leonard stories. A big fan of it.
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I love 20 Centimeters of Clown, which was
I haven't read that
and
one.
it is, and I had so much fun doing the narration of that. And so yeah, because I'm a goofball, and
Okay.
so and that story just
Yeah,
perfectly fit my humor.
he loses me with the monkey stories and the silly sounding ones, but it's like every time because he can, I'm bad for this, but I get pulled in by titles, and if the title is simple and it sounds
Yeah,
maybe classic or something, I'm all over it. But if it's like the monkey in a zoo wearing a face mask, it's like, okay, I'm not reading that story.
absolutely. No, I will definitely. This
Yeah.
one will be. I will definitely will narrate that.
Mm.
Also, Cloudy with a, what is the title?
Oh,
Cloudy with a
Cloudy with a
blah
Chance
blah
of
blah.
something.
Grandma,
I don't know.
Chance of Grandma.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's another one where
But
it's
that's
like just
also.
because the title I can't read it.
But can I ask you a question, Ryan?
Sure, yeah, of course.
Um, because you mentioned in the beginning that you started to your channel by with reading your own stories.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that now? Would you, since you now do different things and read other or narrate other people's stories, would you ever go back to reading your own stuff?
Oh yeah, I'm recording one today.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, I've
Because I'm
done.
struggling, right?
Um,
Because I've been thinking about doing my own stuff. I'm not. I do consider myself a decent writer. I don't think I'm a great writer, but I'm a decent writer, and I have a kind of a pile of short stories
mm,
that thematically would match my channel pretty
yeah.
well. And so I'm thinking about doing that,
Well, you
but
should.
I'm
I
not
mean,
sure if I want to.
send me one of them. I'll probably narrate it on my channel. I've got.
Oh,
Yeah, I've been trying to focus more on like smaller authors that I know as opposed to just big stuff. So I'm definitely looking for like short stories written by people that I know. So
awesome. Because that is, why didn't I think of that to
yeah.
ask you? That is actually a great idea. Thank you very much. And I don't know if because I asked Nick whether he would like to proofread some of my stories, because, well, English stories.
Mhm.
Actually, English, I wrote them in English. I don't even know why I did that.
Mm.
And so he uh, thankfully he said yes, and so I just have to finish that. I kind of promised that to send him stuff like for 3 months
Oh.
now, and I never sent anything. But like the last 3 months were like like the last year was, yeah, pretty busy.
Sure. I mean,
Not
well,
always the
if you
best.
want to send them to me too, then I'll happily do that as well.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
will definitely. I will send it to you, both of you.
Okay. Perfect.
Um,
Yeah,
awesome.
but I mean, we can talk more a bit about that. I'm going to wrap up here with my little closing comments. So, everyone, that has been Pete from iReadBooks. His channel is linked in the description. My channel you are on already, so you don't need help finding that one. But it's fantastic
Which is
narrator.
Callipolis Radio.
Yes,
By the
Callipolis
way,
or
Callipolis. And
I have actually heard both. I
Sorry?
have heard Callipolis and I have heard Callipolis, and I don't mind either, but I personally do say Callipolis.
Okay. I'm glad that you don't mind, because in my video on the making of
Sherlock Holmes.
yeah, Sherlock Holmes, I always said Callipolis Radio.
Well, you know what I found
And
is English people say Callipolis and North Americans say Callipolis is what I have found is the difference.
okay,
Yep. I
then
think
it's not
like,
just me being
no, it's like
weirdly German.
it's the aluminium thing. I think it's just like it's a Atlantic difference.
Okay, yeah, then I'm on this side of the Atlantic, so
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
is.
you got the
But
right
I
one.
will still. It's you say Callipolis, so I will also stick to Callipolis from now on, and I will also not mispronounce your name anymore,
Oh no, that's
which
fine.
was even more embarrassing.
No, don't worry about it at
I
all.
called you Rylan, which
That is my name. It is Rylan.
yeah, I know. Yeah, but I called you Rillan, which
Oh, yeah.
that was
But I
embarrassing.
mean, well, I've heard that for my entire life. It's basically my second name, so.
Okay.
All right, but sorry. So that was Pete from iReadBooks. You're listening to Callipolis Radio. This is Festina Lente. We do this every week, either at Wednesday evenings or Thursday day, depending on the availability of our guest. But please come and tune in next week for our next episode. I will also be posting more narrations. I'll have one of my own stories up later today, so please stay tuned for that. It's the first short story I've written in probably about a year, and I'm very excited about it. I like it a lot. So I am getting back into writing. I'm getting back into narrating. Summer is starting. I am feeling amazing. Life is good. Big thank you to Pete. We're probably going to definitely want to have you back on again, because that was 1 hour and it felt like we talked about two things. So I feel like we have a lot more we could cover. But thank you everyone so much for listening. Thank you, of course, to our channel members, Joshua Anolik, Torrance, Catherine McMillan, Ronnie Limestone, and our newest member, Dapper Clown. If you're interested in joining the channel and supporting, you can find information linked in the description below. Once we have a certain threshold of members, I think it's 15, I'll take all the ads off the channel, basically once the channel pays for itself. So if you sign up, you're supporting an ad-free experience for everyone. However, there's never mid-rolls in the middle of ads, and my streams are not monetized either, so don't worry about that. Otherwise, you can also find a link to our Discord, where we do have some philosophical discussions, political art. We talk about philosophy and things relating to this channel, so you can come join us there too. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't need to be a channel member, and we'd love to have you. Otherwise, you can follow me on Instagram at Callipolis Radio. You can also find me on TikTok and Facebook and basically everything at Callipolis Radio. Pete, you can find on, I don't know if that's your personal Instagram or your story one. I don't know if you want me to say it or not.
Well, I only have one, so
You only have one. Okay.
whoever wants to follow me there, which is, well, here's the thing, right? It's a German
It's German.
thing.
Yes,
Wörterpolizei.
Wörterpolizei.
Wörterpolizei, but it's OE, so there's no umlaut in the Wörterpolizei is a joke,
Yeah.
basically.
It's grammar police,
Because
essentially,
I'm
right?
there. Yeah, grammar police is
Yeah.
the word. Yeah.
Yeah, but or
Grammar police,
if you can't spell that, you can go find Callipolis Radio, find who I'm following, and find him there. So you can do it two different ways. But as always, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.